in my opinion, the most important CrossFit Open reminder is let the goal be the goal. Make sure that whatever you set as your biggest priority before you enter the Open is held as your biggest priority as you go through the process of the Open. Don't allow yourself to get sucked into the atmosphere of what's going on at your local affiliate or on the global leaderboard to dictate your actions. Make sure that you are being objective about how you make decisions through that process, and always go back to what you had initially set as your goals for the Open and make sure that you're constantly reminding yourself of that. So today I want to talk through how to optimize for the Open, whether you are a bubble athlete or someone who is quote unquote in the clear. The fitness movement is brought to you by Zor Fitness. We offer coaching and individualized program design, as well as educational content for coaches and athletes. It's all at one place, zorfitness.com. So as I mentioned, I want to talk about two different types of athletes. The first athlete I'm going to be talking to is a bubble athlete, so meaning that you are not guaranteed, so to speak, to make it through the Open to quarterfinals. So maybe you're in the 70th to 80th percentile, somewhere in that range, because the top 25% go. So you need to be at least above that 75th percentile. Again, an important reminder is that for that athlete, you don't have to be at or above the 75th percentile for each of the individual workouts. You just need to be above the 75th percentile across the aggregate of those 3 weeks on the global leaderboard, which means that you can actually be significantly lower than 75%, maybe more in the 60% range. And you could very well actually still qualify for semi or for the quarterfinals. So that's the first athlete I want to talk to. And then the second one is someone who is historically speaking in the clear. And what I mean by that is if they go back on the leaderboard and look at their previous Open performances, they've been consistently above that 75th percentile. That means that they are very likely to make it through, even if they don't have to optimize every little thing about the performance. So I want to talk to both of those athletes. And really, I just want to record this because I think it'll be helpful for other people, but more so, I want to be able to send this to my individual design clients to make sure that we are, again, reinforcing the things that we had talked about, the things that we set as our goals and our vision for the Open. We want to make sure that we are staying the course on those things. And it's always helpful to have a more formal reminder as we enter into the CrossFit Open, especially. So for the athlete who is a bubble athlete, basically what you're doing is you're going to have a max effort test, probably like something like Friday. You're going to rest or do like lower based work the next 1 to 2 days, and then you're going to attack it again. And when you do that, it's very easy to be like, wow, I just did this in maybe the Friday Night Lights environment at my gym. It was a crazy, so much energy in that environment. And I felt like I did either, typically people say I felt like I did really well, or I just don't know how I'm going to have a greater output than that when I come back to it on a Monday for a retest. So my advice would be hey, if we talked about this and it's hey, you're going to be on the bubble, so we need to be testing and retesting at least the majority of the workouts, unless for some reason we think you just crushed one or something like that. If that's the case, then you just need to be aware of this before you actually enter it, that a max effort test rarely feels like that you can actually improve upon it. So you need to be objective, do things like video yourself and watch it back and be able to make critiques for yourself as to this is objectively where I could probably make up some ground, right? These were objectively what my round splits were. This was, how I broke up these movements. And then you can start to get a little bit of actual data around how you perform the work, so that you can just say, well, actually, you know what, if I trim down 3 seconds per transition here and I hold the same, break strategy, then I should actually be able to make up 60 or 90 seconds throughout the course of this 18-minute AMRAP, for example. Those sorts of things are extremely important for someone who is a bubble athlete. So just understanding that if you had selected and you've processed the idea that, okay, I'm going to be on the bubble, I need to be doing redos, understanding that you might not always feel like you should be redoing. However, if you can even make up, 3 to 5% on each of the workouts, or you're even 2 out of 3 of the workouts, you're going to be in a much better place when it comes to your end place across those 3 weeks. So if that's you, you just need to make sure that, yes, I'm going to stick to what we originally talked about, and I'm going to retest them, and make sure that additionally that I am not doing this crazy training or even like normal training outside of those testing windows. Things are going to be a lot more pulled back during the Open because you're basically in a 3-week long competition. You need to be aware of that. So yes, you need to give your best effort when you're actually testing the workouts, but then also you just need to be able to be okay with pulling back fairly aggressively throughout the rest of those 3 weeks. So that's my first person, the bubble athlete. The next person I want to talk to is someone who, historically speaking, is in the clear, meaning that unless there's something crazy that happens or something where it just completely catches you off guard, chances are, historically speaking, that you are in the clear, that you will qualify for quarterfinals. If that's the case, you obviously still want to do the best that you can, right? Don't sandbag the workouts. Don't treat them like they don't matter, because even though as soon as you hit a quarterfinals, everybody's scores are back at 0. So it's like a reset essentially. So I get that the mindset of oh, this really doesn't count for anything. But at the same time, it does set you up well if you have it and you're able to use it as a confidence booster, and it's going to potentially detract from your confidence if it's something that you just were completely maybe not prepared for, frankly. So I would say make sure that you do basically use this as an opportunity to use it as a tune-up, right? So, and if you kind of go about it in that mindset, it's okay, a tune-up or a simulation, for example. The point of it is so that it allows you to build your confidence, that you can go through the practicing, the rhythms and the patterns and the habits that you're actually going to use, like game day hygiene type stuff. That is very important. So making sure that you can do that. However, not attaching your self-worth as an athlete or how you're actually going to be performing at quarterfinals based on how you perform or the leaderboard score on the Open, because again, it's going to get reset. Doesn't matter in that sense. So again, you're going to hit the workout once, probably at least, hopefully 12 hours after it's announced. That way we can get, the majority of the information that's going to come in, hit it one time. Ideally, you're coming off a recovery day or more of a rest day, and that allows you to get a good score, but then also it doesn't detract from your training moving forward, where you can perform other high quality bouts throughout the next 72 hours before your next rest bout. And that allows you to, again, not only get a good score on the Open and practice your stuff around that, but then it also will start to simulate more of the quarterfinals environment, where you're going to have multiple testing windows within a few days, and you're going to have multiple high output bouts, getting in the habit of doing that. So it doesn't just become okay, can I perform well on one workout once a week? It's, can I be able to perform multiple bouts of work in a relatively condensed time frame with things that are going to have a broader testing of skills? Because the Open, as we know, is pretty narrow in terms of its focus, in terms of its ability to test people, because it's testing everybody in the world, whereas quarterfinals is going to be whittled down quite a bit. So you can be a little bit more careful, and then it's also got more tests available to it as well. So you can just use a little bit of it's just a different test, frankly, right? So you just need to realize that as you're going about the Open, yes, you're probably going to have a lot of high turnover, lighter weights, things like that, more body weight type stuff, where you may or may not lend itself super well to your skill set. So it's important that as you're going through the Open, if you're someone who is, again, very likely to qualify through, that you hit it once, you hit it as best as you can, and then move on, provided that you actually met the standard and to follow the rules. So again, understanding that the training there is going to look fundamentally a little bit different than the tests that you're asked to do for the Open. Again, quarterfinal style tests, you're selecting for a different type of athlete. That testing body just looks different. So realize that me as your coach, or someone else, hopefully, if they're doing an adequate job as a coach, their job is not to prep you for the Open if you know you're going to make it through, right? Their job is to prep you for quarterfinals, because basically there's very, very few athletes that are shoo-in for quarterfinals anymore, with only 40 qualifying. So my advice, try to detach yourself as much as possible from the leaderboard itself. However, anchor yourself in your I don't want to call it worth, but maybe how well you did on the effort that you did, your hygiene around, filming yourself and going through the process of that, how you think about and execute on a workout that you strategize and try to do your best performance on, And then use the Open as a tune-up, a practice opportunity, essentially like a runway, right? Because it's going to basically start your competition prep cycle. So use it as a runway to gain momentum so that, as you actually hit the ground running into, post Open where you got like 3-4 weeks left before the quarterfinals tests, that you are basically allowed to accelerate you through that process. And finally, I would say realize that if you're someone who we know you're going to make it through the Open, you are not peaked for the Open. So just keep that in the back of your mind. You're using this as a tune-up. You are not peaked and ready to go. So there are going to be other people who are just so excited and amped up that they're going to be peaked, but that's too early, right? You got a long runway to go before you actually get to quarterfinals. So making sure that you're healthy, prepared, and mentally ready when that time comes. So let the goal be the goal. That is my advice for the 2024 CrossFit Open. Thanks for listening today. If you're someone who just started listening to the show, I would encourage you to subscribe so you can stay up to date. If you're someone who's been listening for a while, I would encourage you to rate and review the show. And lastly, the best thing that you can do to support our work is also the best thing that you can do for your performance. And that is by hiring one of our coaches. Until next time, stay the course.